Welcome to my channel, guys. In today's tutorial we're going to learn how to sew this pencil skirt. In our previous tutorial I showed us how to draft the skirt. I'll be dropping the link on the description box to that video just in case you want to check that out. To my old subscribers, thank you for stopping by once again, and if you're just seeing this channel for the first time, please subscribe. So I folded my fabric into two and I've placed my pattern on it. You don't need to fold your fabric into four because we're going to be cutting the front and the back separately. So when we cut our center front, we'll be having one piece because we are going to be cutting this part on fold, and then for our back piece we'll be having two pieces because we are joining this to create one piece. So I'll be putting in my allowance before I cut this because I didn't add my allowance when I was drafting this. So you're going to determine how many inches allowance you want to keep. If you're making this for yourself or for a client, you can actually add 1 or 1.5 inches. But if you're making this for a ready to wear, then half inches is just fine. This is because you'll be using your size chart as a guide, so you will not need to add too much allowance just to give it that overall neat finishing. So since I'm making this skirt for myself, I'll be doing 1 inches allowance. So I'll go ahead now to pin this down before I add up my allowance. Ensure that our center front is on the folded part. Okay, you can see what we have here is the folded part. Our center front is on the folded part because when we cut it out, we want to have just one piece. So we want to arrange this. We don't need allowance on this center front area. For the side, I'll go ahead to add my 1 inches allowance. For the waistline, I'll be adding half inches. Then I'll be adding my folding allowance at the hem of the skirt. So I'll be doing 4.5 inches. So let's just do 1.5 inches. Then I'll use my rule to connect all these lines. I'll be doing same for the back, adding the same inches I added here, which is 1 inches on the side, 1.5 at the hem, half inches on the waistline, and then for the side I'll just be adding half inches because we already have our zipper allowance here. After adding all my allowances at the right place, we did 1 inches on the side, half inches on the waistline. I did half inches on this side and 1.5 inches at the hem. Okay, so I'll go ahead to cut now. So guys, right here we have our cutout skirt. Next thing you want to do is to note out your dart lines. You need to mark that out. So a good way to do that is to notch it. Okay, so what I'll do is you can notch it or you can mark it like so. Just note the dart legs. So holding both of them, I will just fold it like so and notch the center leg. Then I'll go ahead to just give it a cut on the side, on both sides where the darts are. If you wish, you could still redraw your dart, if you wish you could redraw your dart and then take the measurement, or you do it when you're sewing. So if you wish, you could do it like this so that when you're sewing, you know what you're sewing on. We're also going to do the same here. So guys, before we take this to so I would like to point something out to you. Now these vents we had added, like this is the basic skirt we have drafted. But if you're making a ready to wear, you don't need a lining. You just need the fabric. That's why you should go for quality fabric where even without the lining, it's still going to look clean and quality. So this vent is something that you add when you're adding a lining to a skirt. But because we are making this skirt as a ready to wear skirt, we are not going to use a lining. And because we are not going to use a lining, I will not be needing this extra vent. For me, I like to add the vents just when I'm using a lining. It can differ from one tailor to another, but I like to use the vent when I'm only adding a lining to it. So since I'm not adding a lining to it, I'm going to take out my vent. So the vent I'm going to take out is this extra push out we have here. So what we are just going to have here now is a straight line, that is a zipper line flowing down. Without this vent, this is what we are supposed to have, like a straight line like so. So you can actually measure this. Whatever you have here as your zipper allowance, 1.5, you can just come and keep measuring like so, 1.5. At this point, 1.5. Remember, we did a butt contouring here. So you want to take note of that when you are taking these measurements down. So it's not going to just take a straight line. You want to ensure that you're following this contour because we're making a pencil skirt. So we don't need this because of the kind of skirt I'm making. So I'm just going to fold it over like so, because I intend to still use this pattern to cut other skirts, and that's why I don't want to trim it out. So I'll just fold in to hide in that part and then transfer my allowance now on this part. So since we don't need it, I'll be trimming it out. So this is what we have now, our zipper allowance flowing through the slit. We know that this is the point of our slit. Okay, so you would also take note of your zipper line, where your zipper allowance starts. You take note of that so that when you're sewing, you won't shift it. So the next thing we are going to do now is to head over to sew. But if you're making a ready to wear, please, the first thing you want to do is to go ahead to weave, overlock the sides and the hem. You can leave the waist line because we're going to be using a band for it. But you want to go over to overlock it first before you start sewing. This way to give it that overall neat finishing. You can actually sew this just in case you don't have an overlock machine. You can sew this and then take it out for them to overlock it. But trust me, if you want that neat finishing, that ready to wear finishing, you should overlock it first before you start coupling them together. So what I'll do is to go ahead to overlock it, overlock the sides, all the sides, and the hem of the skirt, leaving only the waist. And then we'll head over to sew this and couple it together. After overlocking, we are going to join our zipper on our zipper allowance, but before then we are going to stitch that zipper allowance. You can choose to use whatever zipper of your choice, but I'll be using this invisible long zipper. So this is the zipper I'm going to be using. Now I'm going to note where I want my zipper to stop and mark it, and then from this point to this point I'll be creating a loose stitch, and from this point to where my slit starts I'll be creating a firm stitch. From this point now to the end of the skirt I'll be making a loose stitch. That's because we are going to loosen the top and the bottom much later. So when I go to sew my zipper allowance, I would also be sewing my dart on the part which we had notched. After sewing this is what we have at this point. It was sewn. So this is loose stitch, this is tie stitch, this is loose stitch. Okay, we're going to be opening our zipper and our slits, and that's why we had there. So turning to the front, can you see this bulge area on the skirt? Now that is the contour we did. This has already made room to accommodate our bum, giving it that beautiful fitted look. I'm going to take this now to my machine to shape the both sides. So depending on how many inches you kept for your allowance, you're just going to measure that down and sketch it out, because you're going to be stitching on that line. If you like this video, the only way you can show your support is to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for more videos like this. Thank you. After marking out my 1 inch on both sides for the shaping, I went on to then pin it down to keep it in place while I sew. After sewing my sides, shaping my sides, I opened up the center back to iron this, to press it. We want a crease line and we want that part laying very flat. That's because we want a crease line we're going to use as a guide for our zipper, and also to get that slit fold. So this is how you're going to be placing your zipper, noting where your zipper stops. And I decided to use this invisible zipper. At this point, I've placed my zipper, and this is what we have for the back. I'm going to show you how to install an invisible zipper, so I'll do that on another video. So guys, because we're making a banded skirt, I'm going to be using a band for this skirt. I've cut out my band. This just is more than my actual waist measurement because I will end up trimming the rest when I'm sewing. This band measures about 4.5 inches. So because I've done the press off camera, I'm just going to demonstrate how to do your press. So I had folded out the first half inches like so. Can you notice this first half inches I folded in? Okay, then I pressed it. All right, I'm just pressing it to demonstrate, to show you. Then I folded about 1.7 inches and then pressed it. So what I now have left is half inches. Okay, so you can make your band bigger or even smaller. There's no standard to this. It's just about what you want. Then my band is very long, longer than my actual waist measurement. I'm going to be trimming out the rest. So I'm opening my slit here at this point where we made loose stitch on the slit. So I'm doing this to reveal that crease line for our slit. We are going to be folding the hem of our skirt and we need this loosened up. Okay, so we had measured 1.5 inches for our folding. I'm just going to take my tape to confirm that I'm folding at 1.5 inches and then go ahead to fold it all the way round and then pin it down. When you get to the part where you have your side seam, open up that seam. Okay, that's the way we are going to be sewing this down. Open up your seam and pin it, and then you will do the same when you get to the other side of the seam. Make sure that when you're folding the slit area, the two slits aligns equally like so. Can you see how I'm placing my hand to check to see that it aligns before I go ahead to pin? You don't want one longer than the other. Then you can go ahead to just pin the rest. After confirming that the folds were accurate, I went on with my iron to press this down. Okay, we are trying to make a seamless skirt here, so you need your iron for this project. You're going to press so well to give it that crease line so that even when you take out your pins, you know where to fold. Concentrate on making sure that you have a crease line on the slit area and on the hem. When you're done pressing, now I would like to show you how to create this professional ready-to-wear finishing on this fold. You're going to mark out this line like so where you have it folded and create a slant line to the apex of the skirt. When you're done, you'll mark out the other part horizontally as well. Now lift out the fold and match out the two pieces you just marked out. You can go ahead to pin this down to help you hold it in place like so. Now that we have that line, this excess, we don't need it. We're going to be cutting it out. So you're going to cut it like 1/4 inches above this line, not exactly on the line, just 1/4 inches above the line. This is what you should have when you are done. Now we're going to be sewing this, but of course we'll be sewing it inside. Therefore, you turn it over to the back so you can stitch. I'm just going to use a pin to hold it as though I've sewn it, so you see what the finishing will look like when we sew this. When we turn it over, we're going to have this. Can you see the difference between this and this? So this is how we'll be finishing it. I'm going to sew this over now on my machine, taking out my pins to show you how to do this as well. So just like I explained, you're just going to sew on 1/4 inch on that slant line. And when you are done, you're just going to trim out the sharp edge like so to create that pointy finishing. And then of course you're going to press this when you are done to make it seamless and flat. Can you see how neatly finished it is? I'm going to repeat the same on the second slit. You're going to mark out the point where the slit and the hem meet and then draw a slant line at the apex of the skirt. I'm remarking that point so I see it clearly. Now the point where you have marked on both the slit and the hem, they should meet each other like so. Lift up the bulge. Okay, you can go ahead to hold it with your pin so that you cut a straight line. You're going to be cutting 1/4 inches above that slant line we had created. and then you fold it over to the back like so, and then stitch on 1/2 inches on that straight line. After stitching, trim out the edge and then reveal the front. This is what you have. The first slit and the second slit must align. Make sure they are equal like so, and then you can go ahead now to press it. Next we're going to fix is our band. Okay, because my zipper is long, I'll go ahead now to cut it. Before I cut it, I would have to unzip it so I'm not cutting out the head of the zipper. We are going to be fixing our band and ensure your zipper is laying flat. We are going to start first from the wrong side of the skirt. So notice that the folded part of this band is facing me and the flat side is facing the wrong side of the skirt. I also pushed my band about 1/2 inches from the skirt to start sewing. So I'm going to be sewing this part, that 1/2 inches that is left out, to the waist of my skirt. I'm sewing on 1/2 inches away from that other part that is folded. We're just holding that part, the flat part, and our waist part on 1/2 inches. So although it's looking like I'm holding the folded part, no, I'm not. I'm just using it as a guide on the right crease line to sew. So when I get to the side seam, I will be opening up my seams as well, that shaped part. We don't want it closed, just as we did at the hem of the skirt. We're going to be doing that for the waist as well. So when you get to the side seam, you open it up. When I get to the end of my skirt, I will also arrange my zipper flap to ensure it's lying flat, and then trim out the remaining part of this band I won't be needing. I didn't exactly trim it on the exact waistline. I kept about 1 inches away from that zipper. If you can notice, it's a little bit long. I'm going to flip it over to sew on the wrong side. Okay, can you see how I'm folding it? So we just flip it to sew on the wrong side because we're going to be flipping it back to sew on the right side. So maintain those 1/2 inches fold we had kept when we ironed it. After sewing the end of the band, I trim out the edge and then turn it over to the front. Can you see what I just did? I'm now using it to cover the front part of the skirt. So now this is where that 1/2 inches we had folded come in place. Now on this part of the skirt as well, I'll repeat the same. So remember we had kept about 1/2 inches away from the zipper. I'll be closing it close to the zipper. We don't want extra. The other one we have about 1 inches extra as the band is going to overlap on this one because we're going to be placing a hook there. And then I'm going to trim it out like so. Can you see how close it is to the zipper? I will flip it over to the front like so. Now we are ready to close up our band, to finish up. So like I was saying, the 1/2 inches we had folded in, this is where it comes to play. You don't have to struggle again to close, folding your 1/2 inches while you sew. It has already been pressed down. So I'll go ahead now to start sewing this down. As you sew your band on the front side, you want to give it that neat finishing. So make sure your seams are right at the finishing of the band, not anywhere in the middle. Just where the band has a crease line, that's where you should be sewing. Ensure to also conceal the first stitch we had made on the back of the skirt with the band. So the back stitch should not be revealed on the front part of the skirt. Your band is supposed to conceal everything and reveal a neat finished skirt. If you look closely, you will see that I use pins to hold my band in place. This is to avoid it from folding. If you have actually used the technique of pressing down your band before attaching it to your skirt, it shouldn't fold. Your band is supposed to lay flat on your skirt without fold. But to avoid stories that touch, I just went on to use pin to further secure it. Better safe than sorry. If you're using a lightweight fabric, I will encourage you to add hairstay to the band to give it that stability and firmness. This will help keep your band stable and not fold. Now this is the finishing of my waistband. Can you see how flat and how neat it looks? Finally, we're going to have to attach our hook and eye to the waistband. There are many types of hook and eye, but this is the one I'll be using. This part will be going on the band that is overlap, and the straight one will be going on the other band. And we're going to be hand tacking this with a needle and thread. I started by attaching the first flat one to the underband. Make sure while you're tacking this, it's not visible on the other side. Then I'll go in to attach the other part that looks like a hook, but this time behind the band. It shouldn't be showing above it like so. I'm checking to make sure that it aligns before I go ahead to tack it, so I don't have to loosen this up again. Then I'll go in with my needle and thread and tack it. Make sure that you do a neat stacking. It doesn't have to show outside the skirt, so you're only picking the part that is facing the inner skirt. It shouldn't reflect outside. There are about 3 holes on this hook, so you have to stitch down every hole on it to hold it firm. This was what it looks like when I was done, and I just hooked it to see how aligned it is, and I'm satisfied with the result. Lastly, we're going to finish the hem of this skirt. Remember, we had only pinned this down and we've not done anything about it yet. So what we're going to do is to add up hemming gum to this. This is to help it stay in place and give it that ready to wear finishing. Some people get to actually stitch the hem of their skirt. Of course you can do that, but trust me, if you want this seamless finishing, you should try this method. So I'm just starting with the zipper area to put some hemming gum, and then to the hem as well. Taking out my pins, I'm just going to place in hemming gum. This hemming gum melts and dissolves when it comes in contact with heat. So once we press this down, it's just going to stick together and not pull out. I'll go over to press this down and do this for the remaining part of the skirt until I am done with it. To further secure this, I'm just going to hand tack some points at this hem. Make sure that you are hand tacking it neatly. It doesn't have to reflect on the front. Just pick a very small piece to hand tack the hem of the skirt. You're just going to do this all around the hem at different points, maybe at 4 to 5 points. Then you can just go in to do an overall pressing of your skirt, and your skirt is ready. This is the results, the front, and we have the back. If you watched to this point, then you should subscribe if you haven't. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.